out to the individuals themselves who are thinking of migrating. Do not believe the smugglers. Please access the official government publications. Please access the official government information on the Department of Homeland Security website for accurate information, because you are being deceived and you are risking your lives and your life savings only to meet a consequence that you do not expect at our southern border. To meet our objectives, we have been and continue to surge resources, personnel, transportation capabilities, airplanes to effect a greater number of removals every week, additional facilities, the remarkable facility that the United States Border Patrol set up here in collaboration with the community of Brownsville. This was set up in just 72 hours. We are surging resources. Earlier today, we also announced the distribution of additional funds to border communities, nonprofit organizations, and several interior cities to meet their needs in their partnership with us to address the situation at our border and to address the humanitarian needs of migrants. We distributed approximately $330 million more today for the benefit of those organizations. We have a plan. We are executing on that plan. I have come to McAllen and Brownsville to see firsthand that plan in action. Fundamentally, however, we are working within a broken immigration system that for decades has been in dire need of reform. That is a fact about which everyone agrees, and we urge Congress to fix our broken immigration system. And until then, we will do everything that we can within our authorities to provide an orderly and safe pathway for individuals who qualify for relief under the laws of the United States of America.
Can you explain why you've seen this big surge in the last couple weeks? Sorry, thank you. Oh, sorry. Can you explain why you've seen this big surge in the last couple weeks? And if you're seeing this big of a surge ahead of May 11th or May 12th, what are you expecting come May 12th?
So the surge of the past couple weeks is really focused on one particular demographic. We've seen an increase in the number of Venezuelan nationals coming to our border. It's very difficult to identify the cause. You know, the challenge of migration is, in one aspect, it's dynamism. It is a very complex phenomenon. We saw the tragic fire in the city of Juarez in Mexico and the impact domestically within Mexico, and since then we saw over the past 2 weeks a significant surge of Venezuelans. We have reached an agreement with the government of Mexico to address that surge, and we're going to see the results of that agreement very shortly.
And if so, how prepared are you for a surge in terms of processing people?
So just to make sure that everybody heard the question, do we expect a surge, and if so, how prepared are we? So as the commissioner mentioned, as Commissioner Huffman mentioned, we've been preparing for well over a year. It was in September of 2021 when we first developed a 6-pillar plan to address the end of Title 42. We updated that throughout the calendar year 2022. So we've been preparing for quite some time, and we are ready. What we are expecting is indeed a surge, and what we are doing is planning for different levels of a surge. That is what we do. We plan for different scenarios, so we are ready to address them, and we are indeed ready to address them.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for taking my question. Can you just talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen on the ground, some of the concerns that you're hearing? And given that we're in a region that's already seeing thousands of encounters a day, how confident are you that the measures that you've put in place are going to work?
I think that there is no question that this is going to be extremely challenging. I do not want to understate the severity of the challenge that we expect to encounter. The border is a very, as I said at the very outset, it is a difficult situation. It requires not only a community of action on this side of the border, but it requires a community of action south of our border, not only with our Mexican partners, but with other countries throughout the region. And indeed, we have an international approach to an international challenge. What I've seen on the ground in my visit to McAllen and to Brownsville is no different than what I've seen in my more than 15 prior trips to the border as the Secretary of Homeland Security. I have seen an extraordinary workforce in green uniform in the United States Border Patrol, in blue uniform in the Office of Field Operations of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, across the expanse of the Department of Homeland Security, and quite frankly across the expanse of this entire administration. This administration addresses challenges as one team in an all-of-government approach.
Mr. Secretary, you guys have been talking about the pathways and the plans that are in place, obviously, for majority Venezuelan migrants that was expanded to Haitian, Cuban, and Nicaraguan migrants. Why isn't that policy being enforced right now? Many of the migrants I'm meeting along the streets of Brownsville are swimming in between the ports of entry. As you have mentioned, if that happens, they're supposed to be returned. They're not being returned, and they're single adults without family here. Why is that happening?
So I think you are actually mistaken, because the parole process for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans that we first announced and implemented on January 5th is underway and continues to be underway. And we continue, if I may, it does. And if I may, we continue to parole individuals of those four nationalities when they qualify under the program that we established and announced. And that requires a sponsor here in the United States to ensure that those individuals have financial stability and they are able to arrive in a safe and orderly way. That is indeed underway. And we continue to expel Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. The number of Venezuelans that we've been able to expel has actually diminished over the past 2 weeks. The cause of that is a very complicated one. We've sat down with the Mexican government, and those expulsions, and of course in a post-Title 42 environment, those removals will continue. And that is why the message is so important, that people, vulnerable people, are receiving false information. They are being lied to that if they come and arrive at our border, that they can stay in the United States. That is not what the law provides. That is not the consequence that we will deliver.
Sandra with Border Report.
I'm sorry, good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. You mentioned after May 11th there would be, quote, a higher burden of proof that the migrants would need to show to have exceptions. Could you expand upon that? Could you also talk about the credible fear interviews and the processes that you're going through to expedite these migrants, so many?
So the rule is being finalized, and until that rule is indeed final and published, it is difficult for me to answer the question just as a matter of law, because it is not set, it is not established until it is actually final and published. But the general concept is as follows: that individuals who access the lawful pathways that we deliver for them will be able to come to the United States in a safe and orderly way. Those who travel irregularly in the hands of smugglers, because I have to repeat again, it is a security and humanitarian imperative that we cut the smugglers out. Those who arrive irregularly at our border will be presumed, absent some limited exceptions, will be presumed to be ineligible for asylum, and they will meet a rebuttable presumption of ineligibility. To overcome that presumption, they will have to meet a higher threshold of proof.
We're going to go ahead. Deportation now? Can you follow on that? Mr. Secretary, thank you. You were saying the smugglers are leading them to misinformation, and if they come in here illegally, if they cross illegally and they don't meet the threshold, that they will be expelled. That's the message you're sending. Can you walk us through what that looks like? Is that like a mass deportation, something different than what we've been seeing?
So Griff, when Title 42 comes to an end on May 11th, we will use, as we have expressed before, our traditional immigration authorities, the ones that we sought to use earlier when we sought to end Title 42, but were prevented from doing so by a court. And Title 8 of the United States Code, our traditional immigration authorities actually deliver a consequence, because when someone is removed, when someone does not qualify for relief and is removed from the United States, they face an at least 5-year bar from admission into the United States. So the consequence is going to be more severe. And what we will do is remove individuals who do not qualify for relief under the standard that will be set by the rule that we will have finalized by May 11th.
And we're going to finish up with this last question from Nicole.
Thank you so much. I just have a question for you, Mr. Secretary, and a quick one for Chief Ortiz. Mr. Secretary, we've heard from mayors here in the Rio Grande Valley and across Texas that they're concerned they're not equipped to handle the number of migrants entering their streets. DHS just allocated, as you mentioned, $300 million to NGOs in border communities. But does the federal government have a role in standing up housing and medical care, especially when hospitals, NGOs, and churches are at capacity and migrants are sleeping on their sidewalks? And just quickly to Chief Ortiz, can you explain geographically where troops will be located? Which sectors are they staying?
So, Nicole, we are working very, very closely with city and local officials. As I have expressed earlier, we are working with nonprofit organizations. This requires a community response, and we are providing funding through our Emergency Food and Shelter Program. Congress allocated $800 million to this program. Last year, we only had $150 million. We have allocated a great number of those funds already to resource the communities to address the needs that you express. There are approximately $363 million left to distribute. We will do that through the new Shelter and Services Program. The community challenges require a community response, and we are working holistically with communities across the border to address this challenge. Luisa, I want to say something more about that, if I may, Chief Ortiz and Nicole. The deployment of Department of Defense personnel is nothing new. Since 2006, every single year since 2006, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and specifically the United States Border Patrol, has relied upon additional resources from the Department of Defense. This year is the first year, thanks to President Biden budget. This is the first year since 2011 that we have been able to dedicate 300 new Border Patrol agents to the United States Border Patrol. The President's fiscal year 2024 budget asks for an additional 350 Border Patrol agents. We are plussing up the United States Border Patrol for the first time in more than a decade, and we are committed to continuing to do so. Resources are vital to the effort that we have underway. The challenges will be significant. The plans we have in place are tailored to meet those challenges. We have the greatest workforce in the world to fulfill our mission, and we will do so, and I'm so incredibly proud to support them. Thank you all for being here.